Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation. Today we will be discussing Peter Singer, A Life in Ethics. Peter Singer is a contemporary moral philosopher. He is mostly known for his contributions to ethics, particularly in utilitarianism and animal rights. His work has influenced global movements like effective altruism, which emphasizes using reason and evidence to do most good. We will delve into his altruism ethics, particularly focusing on their practical implications. From his early life influences to his activism and contributions to animal rights and effective altruism, we will further discuss how Singer's moral beliefs are interwoven into his life's work. Okay, so here we will be discussing his early life and influences. So Peter Singer was born on July 6th, 1946 in Melbourne, Australia, to Jewish parents who fled Nazi-occupied Austria. His family history, profoundly marked by the Holocaust, significantly influenced his ethical outlook and shaped his views on moral obligations. He pursued many studies in law, history, and philosophy at the University of Melbourne and later earned a Bachelor of Philosophy from the Philosophy of Oxford, layering the groundwork for his future philosophical endeavors. And on his influences, Singer was significantly influenced by philosophers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Singer embraced and expanded upon utilitarian thought, focusing on reducing suffering and promoting well-being. Moving on to animal liberation and utilitarianism. So Animal Liberation in 1975, Singer published Animal Liberation, a groundbreaking text that became a staple in the animal rights movement, advocating for equal consideration of interests regardless of species. This basically stood up for animals in terms of animal testing and factory farming. The goal of this writing was to stop being so careless about animals because they too feel pleasure and pain, and that's what he was trying to get at with this animal liberation text. Moving on to utilitarianism, Singer expanded on Jeremy Bentham's utilitarianism, emphasizing the importance of maximizing happiness and minimizing suffering in ethical decision-making. Speciesism. He introduced the concept of speciesism, the unjustified bias toward humans over non-human animals. He argued that animals, like humans, have the capacity to suffer and should be granted equal consideration in ethical decision-making. Singer drew parallels to racism or sexism in animals. So speciesism, to basically simplify that definition, is basically putting humans and our needs over an animal's needs. Even though humans and animals alike, we both feel pleasure and pain, even though animals, can't voice they're unable to voice their pain, they still feel it regardless. And advocacy, Peter Singer passionately advocated for vegetarianism/veganism and actively opposed factory farming and animal testing as animals remain morally indefensible, promoting compassionate treatment of animals. So back then when, the animal rights movement wasn't really a thing, companies were testing on animals right and left, testing products on them, very harmful products that ultimately harm the animals and hurt them, even though this was seen as pointless because an animal and a human could not react to the same thing. Like, they couldn't have the same reaction to a product, if that makes sense. Moving on to key philosophical works. So, the first of his writings was Practical Ethics, written in 1979. This applies utilitarian principles to real-world ethical dilemmas, such as euthanasia, abortion, and bioethics. He argues for the right to voluntary euthanasia, asserting that individuals should have an autonomy over their own lives and deaths. Moving on to Rethinking Life and Death, written in 1994, this argues the traditional ethics regarding life and death, often based on the sanctity of human life, are outdated and need to be replaced with a quality of life ethic, which considers a human's capacity for consciousness experiences when determining their value of their life. Moving on to the next one, The Expanding Circle, written in 1981. This one argues that human morality has evolved over time, gradually widening the circle of beings we consider worthy of moral concern, starting with immediate family and tribe, then expanding to encompass all humans, and ultimately advocating for the inclusion of most animals within this circle, based on their capacity to experience pleasure and pain. And lastly, One World, The Ethics of Globalization, written in 2002, argues that in a globalized world, we have a moral obligation to address global issues like climate change, economic inequality, and human rights abuses with a quote-unquote one world perspective, meaning we should consider the well-being of all people on earth, not just our own nation. This piece of writing basically made people aware that our actions don't only affect us, but it affects our world around us and future generations. And Peter Singer wanted to make that known. Moving on to controversial views in bioethics. So the first one is in infanticide. And Singer's position on infanticide, particularly in cases of severe disabled infants, have ignited significant debate and controversy. Parental choice. He argued for parental choice in such cases, emphasizing the importance of minimizing suffering for all involved parties, challenging conventional ethical norms. Moving on to voluntary euthanasia, Singer supported the voluntary euthanasia for individuals experiencing unbearable suffering and expressing a rational desire to end their lives, sparking ethical debates. And lastly, opposition. His views have faced protests and opposition, particularly from disability rights groups who view his positions as discriminatory and harmful. Moving on to activism and effective altruism. So the first one is Animals Australia, and Singer strongly advocated and supported Animals Australia. This is one of Australia's largest animal advocacy organizations, championing animal rights and welfare. Next is effective altruism. He is a prominent and effective altruism. Let me say that again. He is a prominent of effective altruism, advocating for the use of evidence and reason to maximize the positive impact of charitable giving. Next is global poverty. Singer encourages donating to the most effective charities to alleviate global poverty, emphasizing the moral obligation to help those in need. So this again ties back to his strong belief in utilitarianism, again promoting what's good for others and ourselves and giving back to our community while minimizing the most suffering. And this is why Singer saw this as such an important value of his. He really thought that donating to charities helps others and eliminates suffering and really helps those who are in real need. And next is The Life You Can Save. He founded The Life You Can Save, an organization that promotes cost-effective giving to reduce global poverty. He advocates for donating a significant portion of income to charities that maximize impact and aligning his personal lifestyle choices with his moral obligations. Moving on. to personal life and academic career. So Peter Singer was married to Renata Singer in 1968. Peter Singer has 3 daughters, balancing his personal life and his demanding career. His professorship, he has held many professorships at esteemed institutions like Monash University, Princeton University, and the University of Melbourne, shaping the minds of future generations and teaching his ways to younger minds. His rigorous argumentation. Singer is really renowned for his rigorous argumentation and unwavering willingness to challenge controversial wisdom, pushing the boundaries of ethical discourse. So he's really known for the way he talks and the way he argues a point, and continued contributions. Singer continues to write and lecture extensively on ethics and social issues, remaining a prominent voice in contemporary philosophical debates. Moving on to impact and legacy. So, animal rights. Singer transformed the animal rights movement by far, challenging societal attitudes towards animals and advocating for their ethical treatment. Utilitarian ethics. He popularized utilitarian ethics and effective altruism, inspiring individuals to adopt more ethical lifestyles and engage in philanthropy. His moral intuitions. His work continues to provoke discussion and challenge our moral intuitions, encouraging critical reflection on ethical dilemmas. And lastly, influential figure. Peter Singer stands as a highly influential and often controversial figure in contemporary philosophy, shaping ethical discourse and inspiring change. Sometimes in the philosophical world, a figure that is influential yet sometimes seen as controversial could be a good thing, because it makes people think outside the box and think a different way rather than following like one strict way of thinking. Okay, moving on to our multiple choice questions. Question 1 is, which book significantly contributed to the animal rights movement? Is it A, Practical Ethics, B, Animal Liberation, C, The Expanding Circle, or D, One World, The Ethics of Globalization? Now moving on to our second question, the ethical frame. I'm so sorry. Let me restart that. Moving on to our second question, what ethical framework is Peter Singer most associated with? Is it A, deontology, B, virtue ethics, C, utilitarianism, or B, eccentralism? Take a moment to answer those and jot those down. And finally, our conclusion. Peter Singer has made significant contributions to ethics through his advocacy of utilitarianism, animal rights, and his global altruism. His moral beliefs are reflected in his personal life choices like vegetarianism, philanthropy, and ethical activism. His work challenges individuals to rethink their own moral obligations and take practical steps towards reducing suffering for all. And by the way, for the previous questions, the answers to the previous questions were B and C. So for question 1, the answer was animal liberation. And for question 2, the answer was utilitarianism. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys learned something about Peter Singer and his life's work and beliefs. And thank you so much. Have a good day.